Hello, and welcome to another episode of Stemmy Conversation, where we talk all things STEM and ICT. I am your host, Kenny Roberts, and alongside me, I have Miss Stephanie Simon. Today, we'd like to welcome our guest for the podcast, Mr. Samuel Nyangi. Welcome to STEMmy Conversation.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Yes. So Mr. Nyangi currently works as a space ecosystems developer with Leo Sky Africa, a Kenyan-based space company whose goal is to get Africans in space for Africans and by Africans. He is an aspiring radio astronomer, and his career goal is to see the African continent. He also graduated from the University of Nairobi, Kenya, with honors in astronomy and astrophysics. Currently, Samuel heads the Amateur Astronomical Society of Kenya. Welcome, Mr. Samuel, to our podcast today.
Thank you so much, Kenita and Stephanie, for having me. I appreciate this opportunity.
So my first question is, tell me a little bit about what you do, like explain all that lovely stuff we would have introduced earlier.
Okay, so I currently work as a space ecosystems developer with Leo Sky Africa, and what that means is how do we create a conducive environment for the space industry in Kenya and in Africa to thrive. So what are the various catalysts that we need to have? What are the various partnerships and cooperations that we need to have, as African organizations, as governments, in order for us to have a thriving space ecosystem? And so basically everything under that is what I do at Leo Sky Africa. Yeah, so that if that includes coordination, if that includes outreach, research, that's what we do. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. So I heard earlier in the bio you talked about astrophysics. What's
Yes.
that about? Can you shed some light on that, please?
Yeah, sure. So astronomy is the science of everything above the Earth's surface, be that planets, stars, the moon, galaxies. Now, the astrophysics part now deals with the physics behind the phenomena we see. The physics we know is about how fast these planets are moving around the sun. The physics is about how much gravity is in, for example, in a black hole. So basically the physics that surrounds the celestial universe that we see, the physics that surround astronomy. So it's the branch of astronomy that deals with physics. That is astrophysics.
Okay, cool. Thank you so
Yes.
much for that. What is it like in the day? What's a day in this field like for you?
Okay, so the day in, for example, what I do, of course, is very different from what astronomers across the world do. But what I do at work, basically, we usually have daily check-in meetings at 8 a.m. just to get our word from our supervisor. This is what is expected of the day. This is how we should run our activities. And then afterwards, just do some correspondence. For example, do emails if there's an organization that needs us to partner with them, if there's a school that needs us to do an outreach for them in terms of astronomy. So do that during the day, organize for visits, whether we are going to see government heads, whether we are going to see institutional leaders who in turn are able to make the space ecosystem thrive. So that's just one aspect. And of course, the other one is a lot of research. I do a lot of research. So I'm basically on my computer almost half of the day, just researching about what makes a space ecosystem thrive. So if that is integrating artificial intelligence and machine learning in astronomy, if that's basically researching how many Kenyan how many African countries have launched satellites, how many African countries have space agencies. So basically a lot of research and also a lot of visits and talks and meetings, yeah.
Okay, thank you for shedding some light on that. And, you know, from when you were talking and just from the description of, you know, what you do, we can hear that science, technology, engineering, mathematics, researching, there's like a wide
Yes.
scope of that, all
Very
integrated
much.
into
Yeah.
what you have to do in order to get where you are. So I'd like to know, what are some of the requirements or what are some of the things you studied to get where you are today?
So that's very important because in high school, if you are required to be an astronomer, you needed to have a background in mathematics, you needed to have a background in physics, you needed also to have a background, at least some good English, because being an astronomer entails a lot of outreach, a lot of science communication. So if you are able to package what you do as an astronomer to the outside world, you need some good communication, some good verbal skills. So definitely English, mathematics, which is the basis of astronomy, and also physics, which helps you now navigate the field of astronomy and astrophysics. And then afterwards, when going to campus, college, university, you needed to study, have a bachelor's degree in physics, or you can major in astronomy as I did. And of course, other people venture out to do their masters as well. You can do a master's in physics or also do a master's in astronomy as well.
Okay, thank you. And I'd like to acknowledge Mr. Downer on the call right now. Hi, Bradley.
Hey, Brad.
Hey, morning.
Hello, sir.
I'd like to give Bradley an opportunity to ask a question.
Okay.
All right. So I have, uh, what are some obstacles or challenges you faced while studying or in your career, and how you overcome those obstacles?
Okay, that's a very good question. I think the biggest challenge we face as astronomers here in Kenya and in Africa as a whole is the notion that astronomy is typically a Western career. You know, why are you doing astronomy and you're in Africa? I think that's the question that really pops out a lot. So because they believe, you know, we should be solving other problems apart from reaching out into space. So what we are doing and so how we can overcome this challenge is, you know, teach the public that as we explore outer space, we are solving problems back here in Africa. And giving an example, when we launch satellites, for example, they can be able to monitor or give precision agriculture to farmers. So they will tell you the details of your farm through Earth observation, remote sensing. You have this many hectares and planting beans. Your farm is on fire. You can tell all that from space. So once we are able to convince the public that venturing into space is a conversation worthwhile having because it will solve our problems, then I think that's how we can overcome that challenge of them thinking that, you know, astronomy is for the Western world, it's for Europe and other countries, but it's not. I think astronomy is very much a part of each and every one of us. And maybe another challenge we face, of course, is not enough infrastructure back here in Africa. But you know, and that's why I think Leo Sky Africa exists, to be able to build these partnerships, these corporations, these coordinations, to be able to achieve a space ecosystem that is thriving, be it in infrastructure, in human capacity development. Yeah, so those are the challenges. So how we face them is basically the same. Continue to partner with countries that have thrived in space, be that the US, South Africa, Europe, yeah, and so on and so forth.
All right. Thank you for that response. My other question would be, how would you know when you're successful? Like, okay, you're an astrophysicist or you're an astronomer. How do you know you're successful? Is it that you look for money? How do you know you're successful?
Okay, good question. So how I will define success for me as an astronomer is when we reach the point where we can show the public that the benefit of space is with them. And just as I've mentioned in my previous question, once as Leo Sky Africa or as Africans, we can appreciate the value that space gives to us, be it through space technology, be it through the curiosity, because most of the things we do in outreach, in astronomy outreach, is just raise the curiosity of children in high school, children in campus, and this in turn leads them towards careers in STEM. So once we're able to achieve that, and the children, the students, and the governments realize that space is a resource that we need to tap into to make our lives better, then I will have achieved my success as an astronomer. And if we are able to leverage on that success, because it spans out through all industries, technology, agriculture, medicine, that will definitely be a success for me.
All right, thank you very much. Over to you, Kenita.
Thank you, Bradley. While you were talking, something that I like that you made a link between astronomy and remote sensing. I would have
Yes.
done a little bit on remote sensing, and
Okay.
it did highlight that, you know, satellites in space is
Yes.
able to collect that data
Yes.
and basically give information on farmers. And that was the exact example they used. And I thought it was very interesting. So it's good to know, it's good to like link a specific career to that, because all I was thinking, oh, somebody who does remote sensing, I was thinking it more on I want to say on the lower level, the more interactive level in terms of the
Yeah.
remote sensing itself, but not
Okay.
really sure, you know, okay, how they get this data and which career is linked to getting that data. So I'm glad I was able to get some clarity more than a year later on that.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Yeah, so we're winding down in our interview a little bit. And I don't know if Stephanie has any other questions, but my final question on my end would be, what advice would you give to young adults who wish to pursue the same career path as you?
So it's, and I think my advice, I know this is a worldwide podcast, so if I am to give my advice, especially to the young adults in developing countries, is one, you pursue astronomy, pursue space science, pursue astrophysics, because it's the next frontier. I think we are all seeing, you know, people want to go to space. People want to colonize Mars. People want to do big things with space. So it's definitely a field that is emerging. I remember back in the 2000s, we were saying ICT is the next big thing. So in the next 20, 30 years, 50 years, astronomy is the next big thing. So you want to be part of an industry where a lot of things are happening. And if something is the next big thing, then that means a lot of money is being pumped into it. So if you want to be where the money is, astronomy is definitely the field for you. I think another advice I would give is just follow your passion, because it's been a passion for me ever since primary school, watching a lot of space documentaries. So if it's something you're passionate about, then I'm sure you'll find a space to pursue astronomy and astrophysics. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much for that, because a lot of persons have a tendency, when anybody hears astronomy or astrophysics,
Yeah.
they say it's like it's a headache or it's an issue. But I have a question to add to that. If somebody is pursuing the field and the first thing they hear is
Yes.
physics, right?
Yeah.
How would you like tackle that as a subject by itself?
I'm trying to understand your question. Please, kindly, would you rephrase it?
Sure, sure. How would you go about like studying the physics aspect of your field?
Okay. So, for example, when we were studying physics in high school, a lot of, because in astrophysics and in astronomy, physics is 80%. So calculating distances from here to the next star system, which is Alpha Centauri, calculating the mass of a black hole somewhere at the center of our galaxy. So when you are doing your physics in high school, really focus on getting your equations right, because 101% of astronomy is equations, and you have to get them correct. I'm imagining we are sending, for example, when we sent the first astronauts to the moon in 1969, the physicists or the physics people that were involved were calculating the speed and the fuel the astronauts needed to get to the moon. So you can imagine, as a physics student in Guyana, you did your physics undergraduate, and you're calculating the fuel needed for the astronauts to get to the moon and back. So you need to be very precise and very cautious and focused, in really tapping into the physics, what you do, because we can't have astronauts lost in space because a physicist did not do his equations correctly. So it takes a lot of focus. If you're doing it, you go fully, you go all the way, and you will be a resource that this world needs to take the industry to the next level. Yeah.
Thank you so much for that. I must apologize that I used the question a bit, because it seems to some students, well, I conducted we hear the physics, I think we start to like panic, but I am truly
Okay.
amazed at how you guys come together with these
Yeah.
equations and
Yes.
get us to these different points of communication. It's truly
Yeah.
amazing. I can tell you that.
Thank you so much.
So over to you, Kenny.
Okay, I'm sitting here and just something keeps playing in my head. But first of all, it's good that you were able, because I could imagine that, space and the obsession with space, is as a childhood,
Yes.
a childhood dream. It's something that people dream about a lot as children, and eventually as they grow,
That's true.
they probably branch different things. You were able to, live through that. But the question that keeps in my head is, have you ever worked with NASA, or are there any links to NASA?
That's a good question. What I would say we do is a lot of what we do is we borrow from NASA. And I get this asked this question a lot, and my response is usually this: when I try to bring what NASA does back here in my home country, back here in my home continent. So I particularly don't have to work for NASA, because then if I do, then who will work here back in Kenya? Who will work here back in Africa in the astronomy industry? So my goal is to keep up with the latest technology that NASA is using, keep up with the latest data, because for example, Kenita, the data we use for agriculture to map out farms comes from the satellites that NASA uses. So we depend on them for a lot of the things we do. So when I become a good student of NASA, then I can become a good astronomer for my country and for the continent at large.
Yes, I love that. I love those aspirations. It's very nice.
Yeah, thank you.
Very, very nice. My last question, I know.
Okay, yeah, feel free.
I would like to visit a country in Africa. So tell me,
Welcome to Kenya.
which country would you advise?
Of course, I will vouch for my own country. Yeah,
as you should.
Yeah. But indeed, I think Kenya is one of it's a hub for innovation, a hub for tourism, especially in Africa, a hub for one of the world's greatest athletes, home to the world's greatest tea. I don't know if you've had tea. Maybe when you come, I'll invite you for tea so you can taste the Kenyan tea, Kenyan coffee, very worldwide recognition. So feel free to visit Africa. And I think one of the countries I would like to visit as well in Africa is South Africa and Egypt, just because of the rich culture that these two countries have. But yeah, you're free and welcome to visit Kenya anytime.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Anything else from anyone before we officially close out?
I like this response to Stephanie's question. When you hear physics as a high school student, those equations made me run.
I totally
Those
agree.
equations So I love the way he
Yeah,
responds to
yeah,
that question.
thank you so much.
All right. So I am very happy of the conversation we had today, and we truly appreciate having an astrophysicist here on our podcast. It's
Anytime.
very, very different field, very, very, I want to say, special, very unique. And
Yeah.
so thank you, Mrs. Samuel, for sharing your experience with us today. I'd like to encourage our viewers to be sure to follow us on social media. We are on Facebook and Instagram as @Stemmy.conversations. And we're also on major podcast sites, for example, Anchor, Spotify, Apple and Google Podcasts, Digital Go Loud as @Stemmy Conversations. You can also check out our YouTube channel, which is Stemmy Conversations. And we'd like to say and do have a great rest of your day/night. As you can, this is very suiting to say here, because
Yeah, yeah.
as you would know, Mrs. Samuel we are a day right now, but Mrs. Samuel has
Okay.
night.
Yeah.
So everyone enjoy the rest of your day/night, and thank you for tuning in to Stemmy Conversations.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.